This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Paul Galloro, who is a self-care and wellness coach. Paul, welcome to the show, man.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's very cool to have you on. I am also in the wellness world, or have been for some time, marketer now. That's definitely my everyday, all day, but I'm a counselor at an addictions facility, and we do body and mind, right? So I've been a personal trainer for, I'm 37, started 17, somewhere around 2 decades. Love fitness, love mental and physical fitness. So I love these types of topics, and I look forward to learning a lot about you. So let's start from the top. Paul, tell us about your business. What is it that you actually do?
Well, first of all, again, Jeff, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for that. As you mentioned, I am a self-care and wellness coach. And my whole thing is to help people fall wildly in love with themselves. And I use movement, mindfulness, and contemplation to make that happen. There's many ways that I work with people. I do a lot of virtual stuff. My anchor program is called Arise, and it's a morning readiness program. So 30 minutes every morning, Monday to Friday. I put on an experience for people on Zoom that includes, movement, journaling. We have something called the Sunrise Social, where everyone that's on there, we get together and, just chat on what's going on. We talk about, the practice or what we've done on the weekend. So it's an opportunity for people to tap into all of these different layers, which are so important. So the mindfulness, the physical well-being, but then there's also the social connection that happens in there as well, which is super important when it comes to our health and our wellness. A lot of times we focus, and this as a personal trainer, people always think we're working just on the body, but there's the mindset stuff that goes in there as well. And then also, as I am a minister, so as with that, I also bring in the spiritual aspect as well. So that's the kind of the main program that I work on. And then I have my international retreats, my self-care and wellness workshops that I lead in different places, studios, and different settings in the community. And that's really my main focus, is getting people to take care of themselves through movement and contemplation. That's the big part.
I love it, man. Hugely valuable to me. A lot of those behind me have been fundamental for my life. And a lot of those books teach exactly that. I try to teach it in some way. Even in the marketing world, you wouldn't think of self-care and wellness, but it's a high pressure role. And it all comes down to the 6 inches between the ears. So it's a big part of my team's practice, how I try to help them move through our mental challenges. Is I really look at it as the main barrier to getting to where you want to go in life, is how we perceive the world and how we talk to ourselves about the experiences that we're going through. If we can have a more jovial approach, move into uncomfortable things a little bit easier, then maybe our path could be maybe a little bit more productive, maybe a little bit more purposeful, maybe a little bit more pleasing to the mind and not so stressful all the time. But something that I want to know, I have an answer in my head, but I want to hear from the expert. Why do all this stuff, Paul? Like, why take care of ourselves physically? Why contemplate? Why not just go to work 9 to 5, grind it out, hustle? Why do all this extra stuff? It takes more time out of my day. Why do it?
Okay, I love this question because I don't think it gets asked enough. And really, the reason to do it is, number one, we're here. We're not just here on this planet to go to work and do our 9 to 5 and then go home and watch Netflix and then, wake up, rinse and repeat. That's, we're here to experience the pleasures of being human. And that involves the emotional stuff. That involves the things that, we think about. Something that came up early on in my spiritual study, which is now part of my spiritual practice, is that thought creates form on some level. So the thoughts that we think are creating the experiences that we have. They're informing the relationships that we make with, people that we meet for the first time, or our clients or our family members. So it like to me, it makes sense to take care of ourselves, to focus on these things, to live intentionally and mindfully, because really this is all we've got in this moment, in this life. And why wouldn't we just want to make the most out of it? You know?
I agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
it's
agree.
about bringing the sustenance and the juiciness to life.
Yeah, the lust for it. I mean, we're here for a short time. We know we were stamped with an end date. We have no idea when it's going to come. And I know there are people out there, I try to view it this way as well, but there are people out there that look at life as a game to be played, like a playground, an adventure to be looked at, rather than just, I have to go do this because I need things that I need to get in my life. So I'm forced to do this, blah, blah, blah. Rather than, when you go to oh, the word escapes me, like Canada's Wonderland. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
what is that called?
Amusement
There
park.
we go. Right. So you go there to play. You just go there to play. And the
Mm-hmm.
best people in my life look at more days like that than not. That waking up, it's beautiful outside, whatever the weather may be. You have new relationships to build. You have new thoughts to think. You have new developments to make. You have new foods to try, new music to hear, new animals to see. And I think that really comes down to our perspective of it. It can be arduous and you can look at it as a burden. That's a choice. Or you could look at it as another adventure to be had, another journey to go on that can be a very playful experience. It doesn't have to be so stressful. That's certainly been a breakthrough for me. Is life was very stressful until I stopped allowing it to be so stressful. My environment didn't change that much. It was really my perspective of it. Something I'm also curious about, because at least from this few minutes of talking to you, it seems like the mind is a big part of it. Do you believe the mind is malleable? Do you believe it can change? If I have a negative mind, can it become positive?
1,000%. It does take work, though. Unfortunately, with the mind stuff, there's not like a magic pill that you could take that's just gonna, make things go away or shift things. It takes a lot of work and repetition, but that's the beauty. Like, our brain is both elastic and plastic. Plastic in the sense that if you don't change, it never changes. It's going to stay the same. You're going to keep on thinking the same thoughts. But it's also elastic in the sense that if you do find that you're observing your thoughts and you're like, oh, you know what? Every time I think this thought, or every time I think that about this person, this is the kind of relationship that I have, or this is the interaction, or this is what happens. And I don't like that. I want to change it. It can easily be shifted through a regular practice of, being aware of our thoughts and then choosing different thoughts. I know it sometimes sounds very spiritual bypassing to be like, oh, just choose a different thought. It's not that easy, but that's the gist of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it for me. I don't know if this is going to be the best way to explain it, but I used to be my thoughts. They would conjure up in my head and I would
Hmm.
become them. And over time, through different mindfulness practices, mainly meditation and reading and having coaches, I now was able to detach from them and view them. I
Hmm.
love the example of you are you're on the side of the road. You're standing on the side of the road and the cars going by are your thoughts. Prior to me meditating and learning these mindfulness practices, I would just chase that thought like a
Hmm.
dog after a car. And now, a little bit more so after many, many years of doing this, I'm able to see them and choose what I want to do from this information that's being presented to me. And that's that neuroplasticity of the brain that you were talking about, right? That elastic side of it. It continues to learn if we give it stuff to learn. It continues to grow if we give it stuff to grow through. So I love that, man. And so, when you're helping people live more, um, like just more,
Mindfully and intentionally, I would say.
yeah. Um, you think the physical aspect of that is important as well. It's not just all mental.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the wellness trifecta is mind, body, and spirit. And so if we look at it in this case, as I mentioned before, thought creates form on some level. So we want to get our mind right because that's going to help us get our body right. I mean, you could go body first and then the mind stuff comes. Like, it all just depends on how you're going to approach it. But I truly believe that you can start with the mind and that's going to bring the body into the equation. We have to, and from your personal training days, like, you have to be regular with your training. You have to, if the prescription is 4 times a week, you got to show up and you got to do the work, and then the results come. That's true for the mind stuff, but then also the body stuff. I'm a yoga therapist, so I do a lot of work based on yoga philosophy and yogic principles. And one of them is that the body speaks the mind, meaning if you have negative thoughts, your body's going to be in a lot more, it's going to be painful. You're going to be a little bit more susceptible to injury. It's just not going to feel pleasurable living in your body, whatever that means, right? So that's the body speaks the mind, but then the mind also speaks the body. If we are in pain from inactivity or from, not having strong enough muscles to support our posture in an upright position, then our mind, like, we're going to feel that pain, and then our mind is going to go into that space of, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, everything's a struggle. So we have to work with the body and the mind, and they need to be aligned and congruent in order for us to have the benefits and experience all the juiciness that comes with being a human being on this planet at this time. So yeah, they both need to be working. We need to be working both of them together.
So they are intrinsically connected. There's no way to break that mold. It's one or the other, both in combination. They are connected.
Yes.
I love it, man.
Mhm.
Okay, so kind of got off track there, but I love these types of conversations. Sometimes I just wing it. So I was going to ask you about myths and misconceptions, but my main one, actually, let's hear it from your point of view. One of the main things about this show is providing quality education, because if I have thoughts in my head, like the gym, one of the misconceptions for the gym, which sounds so silly to me, because I've been in it for so long, but it's common. If I go to the gym, it can increase my chances for injury. Therefore, I can't afford to get injured because I need to be a dad. I'm not going to go to the gym. That could be a thought in somebody's head. If I present them with new information and share with them that it reinforces their joints and lowers their risk for injury, maybe now they'll go to the gym. So when it comes to your business, for what you do with your clients, what common myths, misconceptions may be out there that are planted into our head for a variety of reasons that you could help clarify, so that somebody could be like, yes, meditation isn't nearly as hard as I'm making it out to be. It can be very peaceful and it can be very beneficial, maybe.
Mhm. Are the two main ones, because two of the main things that I work with, and whether it's a workshop or a retreat or my morning program, the two kind of main pillars are meditation and mindfulness. And there's a few myths that I would love to break down here, because number one, oftentimes we use meditation and mindfulness like these words interchangeably. They're not. To me, I see them as two separate functions. They work very well together, and one allows the other to happen, but they are kind of two separate functions. Number one, meditation is our ability to focus on one thing at a time, right? And it could be anything. It could be your thoughts, it could be your breath, it could be a candle, it could be whatever it is that you want to focus on. So that's meditation. It's bringing your mind into this single pointed focus. And then mindfulness is being aware of the present moment. So you would be using your mindfulness awareness in order to meditate, but you don't necessarily need to be meditating to be mindful. You could be going for a run, or you could be, playing a sport and still be mindful in that. And one of the biggest misconceptions, so I wanted to just kind of give you that background first. But one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that, and you kind of said it, meditation is hard. Meditation is not hard. Mindfulness is not hard. It's just different, right? Like, we go through life just having to do, whereas meditation invites us to be, right? So that's different, but people perceive it as hard. The other thing is with meditation that we have to quiet our mind. But just as you mentioned with the busy street, like, cars are always going to be going on the street. Our mind is designed to think, so we're constantly going to have thoughts. But meditation is what you had said, Jeff, with that kind of stepping back, away from the thoughts to just then observe them. So I'm no longer identifying with the thought. I'm just kind of watching and be like, oh, there's that thought again, right? So meditation doesn't necessarily mean that we have to quiet our mind, that it needs to go blank. In yoga, we call meditation pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop tasting things and stop hearing things and stop seeing things. It's not that. It means pulling away from the reaction of those senses. They're still going to happen. They're still going to be there. The thoughts are still going to come, but I don't need to quiet them. But my meditation practice is just watching them without reacting to them. And then the same thing with mindfulness, that mindfulness means that your life is going to be perfect all the time. No, I could still engage in my bad habits, but be mindful about it, because it's that mindfulness that is then going to create the thought in my head, like, oh, there must be a different way because this isn't working for me. And then that's where the perception and our thinking happens. It's like once we start to feel like there's got to be a different way, that's where mindfulness begins. You can still do the bad habit, but then with the mindfulness, you start to become more aware and more intentional. And then you choose the new thoughts and you start to think differently once you've chosen them, you know, all day, every day for a period of time.
Yeah, I love that. So you said our being mindful and being more aware helps our meditation practices.
Yes.
Does meditation help us become more mindful or more aware, or are there meditations specifically made for mindfulness, for awareness?
Yeah, I mean, any form of meditation, whether you're doing a visualization of, lying on a beach, watching the waves go, or if you're doing a meditation where you just kind of sit there and feel the sensations within your body and notice kind of, oh, I feel a flutter in my tummy, and oh, what's causing that? Like looking at the emotional connection to the physical sensation. Doesn't really matter what the practice is, but it's the practice itself of being intentional with our thought, or constantly guiding our awareness back to our breath. That's a common meditation. That's going to help our mindfulness. It's going to strengthen our mindfulness muscle. I look at meditation, and especially that kind of seated focus your mind on something, your breath, or a picture in your mind. That is like it's kind of brain gym, but it's exercising our attitudinal musculature. And what I mean by that is, like, when
Can
I
you say
sit,
that again, please?
yeah, meditation is strengthening our attitudinal musculature. So the muscles that we need within our attitude to not react when, somebody cuts us off. Like, that's a muscle that we need to train. And yes, you can go into the gym and, do your bicep curls and bring your mind to the muscle and feel all that. But you also need to, like, do that in a place of stillness so that you're watching your thoughts. And then when you are in that situation where you need that strength of your attitudinal musculature, you have better access to it because you've been working it in your meditation practice.
Love it. So good.
Mhm.
I just think about if like every human were to wake up every day and spend the first, whatever, 30, 40 minutes of their life moving a little bit, getting a little sunlight, getting still for a little bit, what would that do to us as a species? I don't know, man.
Oh,
It'd be
yeah.
an interesting thing. It
It
certainly made
would.
a difference in my life.
Absolutely. Jeff, if I could just say, I feel like it would be the dawning of the age of Aquarius, where we'd all be just frolicking in the sun around, and just, in all honesty, just connecting and being. If we all took that, even 5 minutes, they say the way you spend the first 5 minutes of your day will determine the rest of your day. So how many of us are waking up and the first thing we go to is our phone, and we
Mhm.
start scrolling through the social media, and it's not all the fun and, I mean, it can be there if that's what you're focusing on, but sometimes there's not so good stuff that comes into your mind, and then it gets in there and it starts eating away at it. But if you spend that time to just be with yourself and connect with yourself, you're going to be more likely to connect with others. And you do the thing to strengthen your mind and your mindset, then you're going to have a more, you'll be more resilient through your day. So yeah, we definitely need more people. And that's why I created my program too, was so that people have a space. If you don't know what to do first thing in the morning, just come sit down with me. I'll tell you.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the average person. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm a group of it, a group of that, you know, population. You are. There's
Mhm.
people that have been avoiding it for years and know nothing about it, and then there's a handful of people in the middle. So if you were to have, 1,000 people, all different journeys through these spiritual practices, these mindfulness and physical practices, where would you say is a good starting point for us? What should we be doing to bring out the lust or the zest in our life, feel a little bit better about ourselves?
The biggest thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is to be intimate with your breath. And I know that's like, huh, what? But just watching your breath throughout the day, throughout different moments, that is like the key um, to being mindful and to be living and to live a more intentional life. Because your breath will tell you when you're at ease. If you can take at least two expansive breaths that like literally expand your rib cage and contract it again and expand it. At that second point, your brain gets a message, okay, I'm at ease. And so then our all of the stress hormones and everything kind of settle and we're in a more present state. Um, our breath can also tell us when we're holding on to an emotion that needs to be released, whether it's through movement or through talk or through journaling, however it is that you want to get that energy moving. Your breath is going to let you know where you're holding on, right? If you can't get that expansive inhale, you're holding on to something in your gut somewhere that is kind of restricting you in your movement and in your ability to be present. So I really would just, even if it's 30 seconds where you place a hand on your chest to feel your heartbeat and just breathe into that, that is going to have such like a massive impact on your present moment experience that will shift the rest of your day from that moment. So I think just people spending the first 30 seconds getting intimate with their breathing first thing in the morning. You've already developed that relationship and you'll be more likely to stay connected to it through the rest of the day. And the more connected you are to it through the rest of the day, our breath is the only thing that is both controlled and not controlled. If you think about it, you're going to be able to breathe deeply and expansively and, all of that stuff. If you don't think about it, your brain is going to automatically get your lungs to take an inhale, but it's only going to take in what you need to survive. So when we are intentional with it, when we do bring our mind to it, then we can start to use it to affect our nervous system. And when we find ourselves in this stressed out, reacted spot, we can use our breath to bring us back down. So it's got so many benefits that just starting with that, being aware of one breath, then be aware of two breaths, then be aware of three breaths. Eventually, you're going to just feel your breath throughout the day. Um, and it's going to create a huge change, which is now the cue for me to stop and take a breath. So you can ask the next question.
It's great tips, man. Let's talk about you a little bit outside of the practices that you're helping your clients with. First off, what got you into this? What led you down this path?
It's funny because the first thing that happened for me, I was in my 20s and I was smoking cigarettes and going out drinking all the time. And I remember the thing that I said in my head was like, oh, there's got to be another way. Like, I'm in my early 20s. I was working for the federal government. I was like, this literally can't be the rest of my life until I retire. There's like, 40, 50 years before that happens. I don't want it to be this. And so I decided to stop smoking cigarettes and I walked into a gym and I hired a personal trainer. And it was that relationship that, yes, I had already set the intention that, yeah, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes and I'm not going to, I'm going to take better care of my body. But it was that relationship with my trainer that changed everything for me. And so in our journey together, I just remember saying to myself, oh, I want to help people with this. And so I became a personal trainer, got into group fitness, etc. But part of that journey, because I was too focused on the body, that I didn't spend enough time on the mind stuff, my body just reacted horribly one day, and I had a flare up of ulcerative colitis. And it literally like stopped me in my tracks. Like, Jeff, I'm talking, I was in the gym, I was pumping iron, I was getting muscles. And then I went from like, 150 pounds down to 127 in 3 months. I didn't, and my doctors didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, hey, what's happening? I'm going to different specialists all over the place. They thought it was this, then they thought it was that. And I'm getting all this test done. Finally, they're like, oh, it's this flare up of ulcerative colitis. Here's these medications you got to be on for the rest of your life. Have at it. And I was just like, I don't want to be on these medicines for the rest of my life. This medication will impact my liver, which already had I had a syndrome that didn't allow me to break down the proteins in my liver properly. Then there was there was all these things that I was like, okay, this is not the journey for me. So I had to get into the mind stuff. I had to get to the root of what was causing this flare up of ulcerative colitis, because the medication would work for a minute and then it would happen again. And that's when I hired a naturopath. And I remember sitting in her office thinking, oh, this is just such a peaceful place for me. I want to create a space like this where I can invite people to be so they can heal whatever their healing journey is, whether it's physical, mental, emotional. And those were sort of like the two big things that put me in this direction, because it was like how great it felt for me to do that for myself, that I was just like, okay, I want to help others with this as well. And that's kind of what's been guiding me through this whole time.
Yeah. It's a fantastic answer, and it is not uncommon. For me, marketing was from answering the problem of marketing my own businesses, right? I had my own businesses before this. I needed to learn how to market. So I really enjoyed that, saw the benefit it had on me, tried to help other people with it. A little bit more personally, the addiction clinic counselor there, which I bring the personal training into it. I went there to learn how to be a counselor. They also did fitness and wellness and yoga and all these types of classes there. And they didn't have somebody that was great with nutrition, hypertrophy, strength, power training, all that kind of stuff, powerlifting. So that was my contribution to them. And we've combined them into one. But that was from me breaking my leg and being on the heavy painkillers and building a dependency to that. I had to answer my own problem in my own life. So I went to counseling. I sought out coaches because I feel like those painkillers wouldn't have had such a hold over me if I was living a better life. I don't think I would have sought out that level of comfort, which those painkillers do. That's all they're designed to do, really. Numb the pain, make you comfortable so you can handle your suffering a little bit better. But I feel like when people are really enjoying their life, have a great purpose, they're really aligned and love getting out there and playing this game of life, that they wouldn't take such a risk like I did. So at least that's I identified with me, is that it wasn't a broken leg. There was something at the core. That was the dependency from the painkillers, I think, was a symptom of my core issues, which I wasn't aware of until I became aware of them. And I think that was living a life out of alignment, body, mind, spirit, a little bit. So I sought out help, and they gave me those other two pieces. I had the physical, a little bit of the mental, but not really, certainly not the spiritual side of it. That's something that I was very resistant to. And then seeing the change in my own life over the next, I was 27 when this happened. Over the next 3 years, drastic change, turned 30. And then, I've been on that path ever since, the last 7-8 years. And that's how I found myself becoming an addiction coach, counselor at the clinic. So it's very interesting how so many of us, especially with the wellness and self-care side of things, when I talk to other coaches out there, other people that are dedicating their time to help people heal in some way, help them regain that lust for their existence, the catalyst somewhere along the way was answering their own life complications. So I think it's a beautiful story. And I love that, a part of my purpose, there's a few ingredients there, but one of them is to find out all that I'm capable of. Like, you're given this incredible body, mind, organs, you're this unbelievable sentient being. Let's find out what it can do and then share it with other people. And I really feel like your story is a similar approach. You found out what you were capable of, and and how much you helped yourself. Now it's like, can I help other people with this? The answer is yes. And it's an amazing thing. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I think that's a great story, man.
Yeah, thank you. And the something that as you were talking, something that came into my mind is like yes, I studied all the things that I'm talking about, but to me, I think, and I look for this when I'm working with a coach or with a healthcare practitioner, is what is your experience with this? Like, I find that the people that have gone through something and then go out and help people, there's a depth to what they can deliver that it's not the same as somebody who's like, studied a bunch of stuff and then, you go meet them and they're like, oh, well, you're here. Well, this is what you got to do. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's that personal experience that I think brings even more, which then because we have to remember our whole existence is in relationship. All the work that we do on our soul stuff is in relationship, because you bring up something in me that bumps up against me. So then I have to look within myself and do the work around so that it doesn't trigger me, and vice versa. You know what I mean? So when we get into these relationships with people where we're working one on one or in a small group, and you have that relationship, that just helps the healing or the goal achieving that much more, because there is that energy of union that's kind of ushering this thing forward. Do you know what I mean?
I
So
absolutely agree. I give this example a lot in many different worlds, but I think the example is easiest for me. It's like you have two fitness trainers. They both have the same level of education. One is horribly out of shape and one is in great shape. Who are you going to choose? Right? I mean, the
mhm,
one that is in great shape, I can't make any comments about the one that is not in great shape. There's maybe some other things there, but at least the one that's in great shape has done what they're telling me to do. And if you have done it, experienced it yourself, not just studied it, not just understand it, you've actually experienced it, because we know what we read in a book, when we implement it in real life, there's a lot of truth there, but they can look very different.
mhm,
Also, how hard is this to do? Reading a book is very different than staying in shape for 10 years or, meditating for 30 minutes a day for 10 years. So, and that leads me into my next point. Let's talk about hard things for a second, Paul, because I think hard things are a necessary ingredient to really enjoy life at its highest level. Being in our uncomfortable places, trying new
mhm,
things, finding out what we're capable of, just pushing our physical and mental boundaries is hard, like really hard. And there's some level of discomfort there. It's not found in our comfort zones, I believe, anyways. So we like to ask the guests on the show, personal, business, whatever it is. I think we don't talk about these hard things or these failures as society defines it as much as we should, because I believe we are still so focused on our successes. And that's how
mhm,
we judge a lot of each other, right? I think that's happening less, but I still think it's out there a lot. And for me personally, if I'm going to find out all that I'm capable of, like I mentioned a moment ago, most of that is going to be found in my quote unquote failures. That's where the information I find is gathered, trying things that I'm not certain I can do. Because if I know I'm going to ace this test every single time, then really how much
mhm,
am I pushing myself? So
mhm,
by going in uncertain experiences, by facing fear constantly, I mean, I have most of my rules for life on my arm, and one of them is, fear is your green light. If you're afraid of something, I should probably go do it, right?
mhm,
To a
mhm,
certain extent. If I'm afraid of jumping off a cliff, yeah, my brain's telling me some good information. But the rest of the time, if I'm afraid to go up to that person, if I'm afraid to go study that thing or get back into school or take a risk, become an entrepreneur, whatever it is, move through some level of discipline. Usually something very rewarding is on the other side of that. And I wouldn't even say it's the tangible goal, money, result. It's who I become through that experience that to me is the greatest reward. So we like to ask the guests on the show, is there any trials and tribulations, hardships that you've been through that probably felt hard or maybe even sucked in the moment, that when you look back in hindsight, you would not remove that ingredient from the recipe that is you, because it's allowed you to enjoy your life as you do today?
okay, Jeff, there are like a million things that I can think of right
Yeah.
now.
Well, you're human. All of us, I
Exactly.
think.
Yeah. It's like, sometimes just waking up is that thing. But no, I think one of the biggest, not I think, excuse me, I know one of the biggest challenges that I found in my journey, but really helped me get stronger was during that whole ulcerative colitis thing. I had all these doctors are like, no, you're going to be on this medication for the entire time. And then I would like, or for the rest of your life. And then I would go, do some research about things. And I'd be like, hey, can we discuss this? And they'd be like, no. I got a lot of no's when it came to my health and how I wanted to approach my healing. And it was like, I've always been a person, you tell me no, that's okay. I'll go find yes somewhere else. And so I went to go explore different options. But it was like, when you bump up with those people that you put your trust into, and listen, I'm not saying every
Sure.
medical professional is the same way, but the ones that I was dealing with for this, it was just such a brick wall for me that I could have either crumbled or but I knew within myself that there's got to be a different way. So I'm going to find it. Um, because hitting those walls where they were like, it's got to be like this. And I'm like, no, I want it to be, I know it can be differently. So I'm going to explore that. It sort of taught me to, question things a lot more, but also not to take no for an answer and to keep trying until, I get to the place. Listen, I haven't touched medication in, what are we, 2024 now? So whenever 14 years ago was. And so I haven't needed this. So I was like, I look back and I'm like, yeah, see, I didn't listen to that. I stuck to what I was feeling was truth within me, which I think can be challenging for a lot of people to
Oh yeah.
trust our own instincts when you've got, like they're medical professionals. They've
Yep.
studied this longer than I could even think of. And so they would know, but they didn't know exactly me. So I would say that was one of my biggest challenges because it was like, it's frustrating. You're not well. You don't know what's going on. Well, I'm going to speak for me. I wasn't well. I didn't know what was happening. We didn't have answers. And then when we got the answers, they were like forcing me. And it was too much for me to handle. It was like a really challenging time. But then after that, made all the other challenging things, like when I was fired from one job to then go out and find another one. Like, you just, it's when life kicks you down, it was that moment that I look back. I'm like, if I can work against that, or not work against it, but if I can work through that, if I can still find myself in ways that I was being told not, I can do anything.
I love it, man. If that's the only takeaway we get from slaying our own dragons, from brushing up against our own unmovable walls, it seemed like, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything better.
Yeah,
That I don't accept this. And you start questioning things. And if I can do that, then I can do this. There's nothing that can stop me. Like, what a confidence and conviction in ourselves to be walking around with every day, which I certainly struggled with before. A lot of people that I have helped struggle with self-esteem, confidence, conviction in our own capabilities. And I think it's only through those difficult challenges that we find out how capable we really are. If you don't push yourself, you may not be aware of how much you have to offer yourself in the world.
hmm,
So I could encourage myself and other people to go do those challenging things. One of those is do hard things. It's number 4. After remember you'll die, be here in the moment. It's my things that I need to keep me straight. But I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that. I can only imagine how challenging that was. But it's interesting how many people like yourself have a similar medical expert story. Mine was the same. I'm 37 now. I broke my leg when I was 24. And it was, you're going to have a knee replacement by the time you're 30. You're going to have
hmm,
arthritis in a big way. You probably won't be able to squat. I broke it when I was snowboarding. So these things you probably won't be able to do later in life. I rejected that. There was something in me, like it was something in you. I'm certainly in better shape now than I was at 24. It wasn't easy, but what were my options? Fake knees and no squatting and no and arthritis and no snowboarding, or try something and see what happens. I think the body and mind is incredible. And I think if you give it
absolutely.
what it needs, there's few things it can't do.
Absolutely. And you know that your story there, thank you for sharing that, Jeff, because that just also reminds me the importance of the mind stuff, because you could have easily, and I could have easily as well. Like we could easily just say, oh, okay, you're saying I'm never going to squat again. Okay, therefore I'm never going to squat again. And you go living your life with that thought, I'm never going to squat again. And if the mind speaks the body and the body speaks the mind, you're
It'll
never going
become
to
true.
squat again.
Yeah.
Right. But when you hold in yourself, and and this is another thing too, I think we need to remember, yes, when it comes to fitness, if I was an athlete and I would be training a certain way and looking a certain way and eating a certain way, I get it. We can take those principles and still make it part of our daily life, even if you're not like a professional athlete, and be an athlete of life where you're doing the squats that you need to do to strengthen your legs so that you can go up and down stairs with ease, right? And all of that stuff, again, it comes from our mind. We think, I can't go to the gym, I'm not in shape, or I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. Yeah, of course, if you're going to have that thought, you'll just stay there. But when you shift that thought to, I'm building strength, I'm increasing my flexibility, I'm learning to connect to my body more. Whatever is the shift in your perception is going to create an entirely different experience.
I will never forget that, Paul. Be an athlete of life. I often talk about in public speaking gigs, whatever, whenever I'm in a session with somebody trying to help or talking about these things, I say the game that I'm playing is the game of life. Business is in there, being a son is in there, being a community member is in there, being a fitness person is in there. Those are all sub games, or subcategories of games within the big game. The big game is the game of life. And now that you just plug that, I'll never forget that. Be an athlete of life, because really we think, I got to go be an Olympian gymnast or an elite hockey player. So I have to do these things for that because that's so important. Well, what's more important than life? You can bring those same principles, as you said, to life and become an elite life doer.
Mm-hmm.
For lack of a better word. Fantastic, man. Athlete of life. I love it. I appreciate you sharing that with us. For our last few, man, let's get this one out of the way so people can really know what's the best way to contact you. If people want to get involved with your retreats, your practices, they want you as a coach, what's the best way to connect with you, Paul?
Yeah, my number one place you can go to is my website, paulgalloro.com, or you can also search me on, the main Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all at the same place at Paul Galloro.
Beautiful. And then I don't put this one in because some people like to script it, although you and I have just been riffing back and forth. This has been one of my favorite conversations because I love this kind of stuff. And you're just super easy to speak to. But I only talk about a handful of things in my life. I have a wide variety of interests, but they may just be like surface level interests. So the things that provide the most value to my life are the things that I go very deep in. And entrepreneurship is one, fitness is another one, mindfulness practices, purpose, impact, mentorship. This one is about impact. And a lot of these have come from mentors. I love the line behind every excellent person, there's an excellent teacher. I've been very lucky to have great people in my life to share similar things that you share with me today to help me move forward. In my early 20s, she was a great mentor. And she taught me very clearly that you have an end date and you don't know when it is. So if you want to do something, if you want to live, like really live, do it now. And that led her into talking to me about my impact. Because I think that's a vital ingredient to where we're going as human beings, individuals. She said, at 23, have you ever thought about your impact that you've had on this world? No. 23. I want girls. I want cars. I want popular. I want all the superficial stuff that a 23-year-old boy basically wants. And so I said, no. She said, I encourage you to think about what impact you've had up to this point, regrets, things you're proud of, et cetera, et cetera. Now, tomorrow, if you wake up, be intentional about your impact for that day, because the next day is not guaranteed. Giving you more time, that's out of your hands. What you do with your time is up to you, but getting more of it is out of your control in a large sense. So be intentional about your impact for tomorrow. And then for however long you do live for, what do you want the net of your impact to be? So some people consider this a question about legacy, and that's fine. For me, it's more about like, what is the ripple effect of me as a human now? And we love ask the guests on the show, Paul, what would you like your impact to be?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love that you didn't tell me this beforehand, so I didn't get a time to think about it. But in what I feel within myself, and I think about, what's your impact for the day? All I would like to have, and all I kind of strive for, is that people feel good in my presence,
Hmm.
whatever that means. I mean, there's so much out in the world right now that makes us not feel good. You could turn on the television and you'll find something to make you not feel good. You pick up your phone, you'll find something to make you not feel good. You go on your computer, you even go out into the world, there's always going to be something. There's no shortage of that, that's for sure. So it is my hope that people in my presence feel special, feel important, because anybody that is in my presence is special and important to me, because they're there, and that they love themselves more.
Mm.
That's kind of the ripple effect I'd like to put out there, is that people feel good in my presence, but they also love themselves more because of it.
I mean, that's a hell of an impact, Paul. That's, I mean, if we can raise people's happiness a little bit and have them walk away after a 5-10 minute, 2 hour retreat, whatever, experience with us, and say they appreciate themselves more, as it seems to be something that's lacking out there with many of us. Certainly from my past experiences, that's a hell of an impact. I love it, man.
Yeah,
And it
thank
only
you.
took you like 30 seconds to come up with that. So even though you didn't think about that pre-show, clearly that's been in there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we don't want people to script it, is because I find that what they think about the most as an impact comes out, rather than the very best thing that I could say, because it's going to be in a public forum. Oh, it
Right.
was a blast talking to you today, man. I mean, really, these types of conversations are more my speed. I love talking about business in any way, but if I'm talking about a business that I've never learned before, I'm letting my curiosity drive me.
Mhm.
And that's interesting, but this is more about my interest driving me, what you can teach me and therefore teach the audience today. And you've just been a pleasure to speak to, man. It's been great
Mm.
riffing back and forth with you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's been a blast.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com, or call 705-413-3775.